Okay, so we return once again to give another class on the Plates of Mormon studies, and this is number 5, if I remember. I think, yeah,
Theolona Stevens, and
based on
a
that.
very, very interesting and most informative study. And I've learned a lot. You know, you sort of reach a point, you think, oh, I pretty well know those things, but you realise how much you don't know when you begin looking upon those that have made such a brilliant study as Theolona did on this one. Thank you, Darren.
And we spent a big effort yesterday. I was even up late last night, adding as much seal book stuff as I could gather, and you'll
supplement
to supplement and to understand, make some more understanding, and you'll see that as we go through. But it's very difficult to align some things with the seal book in this study, but where I can, and my memory is good, and also that I'm led by the Spirit leads me when I pray to be led for the study for the classes. So we appreciate all your attention today, and
don't forget, we the success of any presentation is your input, to give us your thoughts. And sometimes, you know, the little brilliant note that you have come up with is the thing that will wow the whole situation. So thank you.
And we invite all your comments and questions, or whatever you want to say. And if you could, someone could let us know, because we won't be able to see the hands go up when we start presenting the screen. As usual, we'll probably have to be prodded or let known that someone's waiting to comment. So we would appreciate that. So we'll go ahead here and share the screen. And it's lovely to see everyone here this morning. It really is. It gives us an uplifting experience, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just do that. I think we should be on target where we've got to go today. I prepared this one today. Okay. Yeah. And can everyone see that on the screen there okay?
Crossing paths.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, thank you, Brother Rex. Yep, thank you, because we can't see anyone now. We can only hear. Okay, thank you very much for that. And so this is part 5 of this book of Plates of Mormon studies, I should say, based on the book by Theolona D. Stevens, as we know. And we've updated with some new insights from the Seal Book of Mormon where we can. Now we'll do a review of last lesson, just because it's been over a month now since we presented last lesson, and this will be just a brief review of what we did last time. We learned about the Urim and Thummim, the interpreters, and also what happened at that time when Joseph Smith was translating the records. And there's some references in there, and I invite you, if you want to go back on this at a later date, to pause the screen at this time if you want to get those references and write them down, and you can look them up for yourself and just review that. And the RLDS references are in light blue, the LDS is in the darker blue, so that way it's easier for everyone to know where those references are. And also, I was going to say something else, but I forgot now. But anyway, you'll see through these screens as we go through. But this was just the description of what they look like, as Joseph Smith described in the history of the RLDS Church, what he described they look like, and also Lucy Smith, that's Joseph Smith Jr.'s mother, described them, what they look like as well. So there was a description of them, because in those days there wasn't the pictures that we have today to identify these things. So that was a good description of them. Excuse me. I've got a bit of a croaky throat this morning. Now, the Aaronic priesthood usage, we learned that back in the old days, in the times of around Moses' time, they had the ephod, the garment that covered the breastplate, and the Urim and Thummim were attached to that somehow, and they used them And there's a picture on the next page of those, how they had that. And they had those.
I remember that from last time. Yeah, there was
the
some
stones,
those. Fred, I think, commented on his knowledge of these, and we appreciate any sort of input that way. It's good for us to understand anyway.
Yeah, and those stones are for one for each tribe of Israel, and they're very holy and significant. And I'm going to do more research at some stage on those stones, on each stone, and what powers they have and such. Because my sister is very good with precious stones and that sort of thing, and she tells me all about them. And some of us that are on here today would know how my sister knows a lot of things about these stones. I would love her to be here and she could explain a lot. But anyway, and we also learnt about the witnesses of the Book of Mormon. This is the Book of Mormon witnesses, and this is a typical Book of Mormon page that describes the testimonies of the LDS and the RLDS on the left and right. And same names, of course, and same wording, just different, set out a little differently in each Book of Mormon. But we learnt who those witnesses were, and so on. But today we move on from that, and we go on into part 5, where we learn about the Sealed Book of Mormon witnesses. And I'm going to need some help here today, because I've done the best I can do to my knowledge. And if there's any incorrect things here, I'd like someone to say, hang on, because it's only to our knowledge. So, okay. So the witnesses to the plates of the Sealed Book of Mormon, this is, and obviously the 3 witnesses were in Brazil. They were Joni Batista, Valdisi Machado, and Wagner Zeppenfeld, sorry. And it says here, and like with the 8 witnesses, others were allowed to view the plates, or the other witnesses, it should say there. And we know that Joel Vendimiati was one of those other witnesses. And I think there was others, but I'm not aware of them, if someone wants to comment on that. But as for the 8 witnesses, the USA witnesses, we call them, to the plates, I've got some names there, and I'll read them out. There was Samuel S. Gould, Tyler Crowell, Kelvin Henson, Robert Leroy Cackler, John P. Pratt, I know, did see the plates, John Steve Woodby, Melva Ann Cackler, and Reborn Renee Cheryl Whitfield. And I think we've got a couple of those witnesses, or 2 or 3 of those witnesses on today. So that's lovely.
It's great that when you present a class and you've got some first-hand people who have been privileged to be able to see these things, that's absolutely over the top as far as I'm concerned, because you know, we seem such a long way away from all of these happenings, and to have you folk here with us, it's just a blessing. It really is. Thank you.
Now,
Brother
if there's any...
Yes, Brother Brian, there is a list of Portuguese witnesses. I don't think I could give you a complete list, but they were some of the first people to see the plates. That, since, of course, they were in Brazil, they were some of Rico's family members and so on.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there would be more than what we've got names for here. Yes. Yeah. So, but they verify that the reason, I guess, for the witnesses was to verify the fact that these things actually existed, and that they had seen them and handled them, and as each of course the USA folk. So any other comments on that?
Yes,
I'd love to.
I think,
This is Brother Bob again. What I understand is that the importance of some of these first witnesses, you know, the 8 witnesses and then the others, is that when the next portion of the sealed book, the second half of it is translated, that some of those first witnesses will be also given the opportunity to see the plates again and verify that, yes, these are the same plates that
Right.
they saw before.
Wow.
Wow,
That's something I hadn't thought about before, Bob. Thank you.
Yeah, because they've viewed them the first time, they would identify them. Yes, that's
Yes.
what I saw last
Yeah,
time.
and
That would be wonderful. So that means that it's going to happen in
well, in our time,
our time,
hopefully.
at some stage.
Well,
Yeah,
your time anyway.
yeah. So
I
that's
never
interesting.
thought of it that way, but I guess so.
Yeah, well, if that's the way it's going to be, yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting to learn.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yep. So if anyone else wants to comment, they're welcome. But we were so overjoyed to know that we know a lot of these people on our presentations.
Yeah, like Brother Tyler there,
and Sister Renee,
and Sister Renee. Yep, and Brother Bob and Sister Melba.
Yeah.
And,
And we see Brother Samuel from time to time on some of
we
the
do. Yeah.
hookups. So that's good. And I think that name at the bottom there is Brother Bento. Is that correct? I'm not. I didn't know that was his full name, but I would assume that's Brother Bento in Portugal. Yep. So
I would think so.
That's correct.
Yep. Thank you, Brother Bob. Okay. Okay. Now, one thing that Dad wanted to include on this, and this wasn't part of the Thelma, the book that we were presenting from, Thelona's book. Sorry. This was from church history, and Dad.
RLDS church history. Yes. And it's a. I've read this several times through, and it's really moving to understand what Sister Emma Smith or Bitterman contributed to the work, and we're going to ask Joan this morning to read the part of Emma because she was asked on 2 occasions to give her testimony. One I think was Jason Briggs, sorry. And the second one was really the interview by Joseph Smith III, even though it wasn't said in the presentation, but it was Joseph Smith III, her son, and Joseph's son, who took over the reorganisation in 1860. Well, at least their contribution to it was rather remarkable, or Brother Joseph Smith the third. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, so I'll do the questions here in the light blue, and the answers will be
from
Emma.
The answers.
Yep. Okay, so what of the truth of Mormonism?
I know Mormonism to be the truth and believe the church to have been established by divine direction. I have complete faith in it. In writing for your father, I frequently wrote day after day after sitting at the table close by him. He's sitting with his face buried in his hat with the stone in it and dictating hour after hour with nothing between us.
Now, I made an error there in presentation. You'll see that it's actually Darren's voice is the voice of Joseph Smith III asking his mother what was happening. So, but that wasn't noted in the presentation in the book of the church history. So anyway, continue. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I needed to correct myself on that presentation.
So had he not a book or manuscript from which he read or dictated to you?
He had neither manuscript nor book to read from.
Could he not have had and you not know it?
If he had had anything of the kind, he could not have concealed it from me.
Yeah, and I would guess that would be true too.
Yep.
Would have been right in front. Are you sure that he had the plates at the time you were writing for him?
The plates often lay on the table without any attempt at concealment. wrapped in a small linen tablecloth which I had given him to fold them in. I once felt of the plates as they thus lay on the table, tracing their outline and shape. They seemed to be pliable like thick paper and would rustle with a metal sound when the edges were moved by the thumb, as one does sometimes thumb the edges of a book.
Where did Father and Oliver Cowdery write?
Oliver Cowdery and your father wrote in the room where I was at work.
Could not Father have dictated the Book of Mormon to you? Oliver Cowdery and others who wrote for him after having first written it, or having first read it out of some book?
Joseph Smith, and for the first time she used his name direct after having unusually used the words your father or my husband, could neither write nor dictate a coherent and well-worded letter, let alone directing a book like the Book of Mormon. And though I was an active participant in the scenes that transpired and was present during the translation of the plates, I had cognizance
That's
of-
the understanding, I guess, yeah.
of things as they transpired. It is marvellous to me, a marvel and a wonder, as much so as to anyone else.
I should suppose that you would have uncovered the plates and examined them?
I did not attempt to handle the plates other than I have told you, nor uncover them to look at them. I was satisfied that it was the work of God and therefore did not feel it to be necessary to do so.
And Major Bitterman, which was her husband at the time, made a comment here, and he suggested, did Mr. Smith forbid your examining the plates?
I do not think he did. I knew that he had them and was not specifically curious about them. I moved them from place to place on the table as it was necessary in doing my work.
Okay. Mother, what is your belief about the authenticity and origin of the Book of Mormon?
My belief is that the Book of Mormon is of divine authenticity. I have not the slightest doubt of it. I am satisfied that no man could have dictated the writing of the manuscripts unless he was inspired, for when acting on as his scribe, your father would dictate to me hour after hour, and when returning after meals or after interruptions, he would at once begin where he had left off, without even seeing the manuscript or having any portion of it read to him. This was an unusual thing for him to do. It would have been improbable that a learned man could do this, and for one so ignorant and unlearned as he was, it was simply impossible.
That's a significant statement, that when you understand what you've just listened to, it's really amazing. And because, this sets aside all possibilities that it was a fake, there's absolutely no doubt about it. And this is just another witness of the truth in the presentation.
Okay, so we'll move on now. That was interesting,
Yeah.
hearing that from church history.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, and thanks. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
that was great to have a role play by Emma. Thank you, Emma.
Well, I woke Mum up. I gave a very short notice on that this morning. I said, "Would you be willing to be Emma Smith this morning?" And she was delighted. So that was great.
That was good. But,
Yep.
I was intrigued about the part that that naturally he was 14 years old, hadn't been to school very much, and certainly not secondary schools or beyond, and would be quite so that he would not be able to coherently, read or write or do that. So that was just another dimension on the presentation of Brother Joseph Smith Jr. And the authenticity of these plates.
Okay, so this is the manuscripts. I'll read this to you. As Joseph Smith translated aloud the engravings on the plates, several acted as a scribe for him, including his wife Emma Smith, which we just heard from, Martin Harris, Christian Whitmer, Oliver Cowdery, and even some others, but Oliver Cowdery was the chief scribe. When the translation had been completed, the Lord commanded that the manuscript be transcribed in order to ensure its safety. This was done by Oliver Cowdery. Hence, one copy was entirely in the handwriting of several scribes, and one copy was entirely in the handwriting of Oliver. It's supposed to be Oliver Cowdery there. I don't know what happened there. It was one of these that the first copies of the Book of Mormon were printed by E.B. Grandin at Palmyra, New York. After the printing was completed, Joseph Smith kept one manuscript and Oliver Cowdery kept the other. And this is quite interesting. We were discussing about this yesterday. When the cornerstone was laid for the Nauvoo house in October 1841, one manuscript, apparently the one that Joseph Smith Jr. had, was placed in it. The Nauvoo house, however, was never completed, and the moisture destroyed the manuscript in the cornerstone.
Yeah, that was sad. Yeah. Anyway,
the other manuscript, the one bearing the handwriting of the several scribes, is in the vaults of the church, held with other sacred and valued possessions.
That was in the RLDS church vaults.
And I don't know whether they still have that, by the way. I think they may have sold it. Dr. Roy A. Chevelle has summed up its history in these few words. Oliver Cowdery guarded it most carefully. In 1849, just before his death, he entrusted it to his brother-in-law, David Whitmer. When David Whitmer died, it went to his grandson, George Schwartz. In April 1903, Mr. Schwartz turned it over to the reorganized church together with the sheet of characters taken to Professor Anthon and Dr. Mitchell by Martin Harris. It has provided the basis of the authorized edition of the Book of Mormon. And that's from Overviews of the Book of Mormon, page 12. I haven't got that book.
Okay. Any other comments on that? Is there any other things that that you know that are not written down here or that we've shared at this time?
Yes, the RLDS sold the manuscript to the Mormon Church not too long ago. I mean, I don't remember when, but within 10 years maybe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's correct. That's what I did here, Brother Bob.
That's what I heard too, Brother Bob. And it was in reference to so many millions of dollars I got for it. I forget now.
Yeah.
I thought the amount was about 35,000 million. Sorry, $35 million. Sorry, and that was to repay some debt they had got themselves into. I could be wrong, but that's what I heard anyway.
Now, I do remember because Dad and I did travel over there in 2002, and I think we saw it in 2002 when we were there. I do remember seeing the handwritten. I think it was this page. I think it was this. And then the second time when we went back in 2019, it had been sold. So anyway, okay, archaeology. There will be no attempt made in this course to elaborate on the marvelous proof which archaeology offers to the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon. This in itself is a great study and is one that is ever expanding as new discoveries are unearthed. The student who is interested in this special phase of the Book of Mormon study is referred to Paul Hanson's book, Jesus Christ in Ancient America, as a starting point in such study. And these books would have been around, obviously, when Filona in the 60s, I guess. I haven't got that one either. But we know online now, because of YouTube and other things, that there is a lot of, I've seen stuff, and I think Brother Bob showed me some stuff on the archaeology of the Book of Mormon as references to go and look at to see what people have found. And there is some startling things to watch on there on these topics. Okay, the geography. The geographical references in the Book of Mormon are more or less general, and after deep study, one is still left to much conjecture. It is not the purpose of this course to study the geography of ancient America, and for this reason only, such references to locations will be made as are necessary for general understanding of the text. We simply accept that the Americas, or the Western Hemisphere, as the land of promise of both Jaredites and the Nephites. Okay, now this, I apologise for the size of this writing down here, but it was the only way I could line it up. So I'll have to read them out.
Yeah,
but
okay. Right.
What it is, it's the names of the books on the left side is the names of the book in the Book of Mormon, actually each book. In other words, first Nephi, second Nephi, and so on, right down to number 15. There's 15 books. Down to Moroni is the last book in the Book of Mormon. And on the right side is the authors of those books. And as we go across and look at first Nephi, second Nephi, we know that that was Nephi that was the author of those books. The Jacob, book of Jacob was Jacob. We know that number 4, the book of Enos was Enos, and Jarom was Jarom. But when we get to Omni, there was different authors with that, and as you look on further, there's different authors with the books below that. But in Omni, there was Omni himself, Amram, Shemish, Abinadom, and Amaleki were all contributors to that writings in that book. In the Words of Mormon, we had Mormon, of course. Messiah was Benjamin, Zeniff, Messiah the second, and Alma the first. And Alma was Alma the second, Helaman 1, and Shiblon, is it? Yeah, Shiblon. And in Helaman, we've got Helaman the second. Third Nephi was Nephi the son of Helaman the second. And a lot of people get confused with the Nephi because there is more than one Nephi.
That's true, because even when Jesus came, one of the disciples or one of the apostles then was called Nephi as well, wasn't he? He was the leader of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and even with fourth Nephi here, we see that Nephi, the son of Nephi, so there's definitely more than 2 Nephis. Yeah. So it does get confusing. It's a shame they didn't sort of put some little twist to it. Anyway, but in fourth Nephi, there was Amos the first and Amos the second, and Mormon contributed to that. He obviously abridged some things there. We know in Mormon and Moroni contributed to that because he speaks about his father. Yeah. And Ether, we know that's the Jaredite record, and Ether wrote it, and Moroni abridged that and compiled it as well. And Moroni did his own writing there.
Any questions on that by anyone?
One little thing you can do to remember how many books are in the Book of Mormon, at least in English, you can take the words "the Book of Mormon" and count the letters.
Wow.
And there's 15.
Wow.
That is fantastic, Brother Bob.
I hadn't realised that one. Yeah.
I like that. I'm going to remember that one. I'll never forget that one today, Bob.
Oh, very good.
That was fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob. Yeah.
Okay, now, because we did the Book of Mormon, I have to do the seal book, and that was challenging for me. I spent a bit of time yesterday on this, and so the Seal Book of Mormon, and correct me please, someone, if I'm wrong here. The names of the book are on the left, obviously the Words of Moroni, the Seal Book of Moses, the 12 Apostles of Moses in the Promised Land, and the Acts of the Three Nephites. They're the books in the order that they appear in the Seal Book. And the authors, I think Moroni does the Words of Moroni. Yep. The Seal Book of Moses was Moses, and I do believe Enoch had some contributing contribution somewhere in there, because you hear him talking with the Lord. So I did include him in, maybe I'm wrong, but was compiled by Mormon. And it says that, and I put that in yesterday because when I was reading the start of the first of the chapter, it does say compiled by me, Mormon. So I just thought I'd throw that one in there. The 12 apostles of Moses in the Promised Land, I do believe is Moses, and it's compiled by Mormon once again, because if you read the lead into that chapter, that you will see what he says there in that first part. And Acts of the Three Nephites. Now we know it was Jonas, and this is a thing that Dad and I always have a
we have a shot at each other about this, because in many of the printing situations, people use Jonah, Jonah. Now, when you read the Book of Mormon, you find out that it's Jonas. And then we thought, well, the Seal Book says Jonah in English. But when you compare the same reference with the Portuguese version, it comes up as Jonas, Jonas. So there's a little point there that probably it's in the interpretation of those that are doing the writing down of the dictation of it or whatever. But it comes up that it would appear, without a doubt, it should be Jonas, Jonas.
But I think. Yeah, but it does make it confusing for new people that come along and read the book.
Yeah,
they think of Jonah. They think Jonah and the whale. You know.
Yeah.
But that's the way I'd look at it if I was coming to read it. But anyway,
that was interesting, that point. Any comments on that? Has anybody picked up on that before?
This is Sister Renee.
Yes, Sister Renee.
Yeah, I noticed that when I first read the Seal Book, but it didn't bother me, because the Bible has things like that in it all the time.
Yeah.
People are called like Isaiah, Zizaias, and the Hebrews also they do that a lot. And so like Jethro is also called Ruel, and he actually, I've seen different names for Jethro. So it's actually a common thing to spell them a little differently. And yeah, maybe that's an English language thing, you know. And so we're really the ones who are like if there were Hebrews here, they would wonder why we, cared so much about it. I don't know.
That's true, and it is. It's just a point of interest that we had noted on that one. So anyway, yeah, that's good. Okay.
And also contributors to that Acts of the Three Nephites, we know was Nephi, his father. I did read a bit last night that Nephi does make a comment, and that would be Nephi, one of the later Nephis.
Yeah.
And obviously, Jesus at the end, he does the. I was reading last night, chapter 14, I think, is the Acts of the Three Nephites, the parable of the olive tree. Yeah, he. You can see that it's in Jesus' words anyway. And in researching that last night, I had this big thing saying, I'll have to track down and see what time frame all these were in.
Yeah.
So because they did something similar in Thelona's book for the Book of Mormon, and we'll get to that in a second. And here it is. So we're going back to the Book of Mormon now, of course. And this is the Old Testament parts of the Book of Mormon. It's explaining when those writings in the Book of Mormon were from the Old Testament times, in other words. So the Jaredite writings we know were from 2200 BC, at the time of the Tower of Babel, and that would have been with Nimrod and such, right through to 600 BC when the plates were with Lehi. Okay, so Ether comes from that time frame, and the Nephite writings from 600 BC to the birth of Christ, until he and obviously when he came after that. But and that's first Nephi, second Nephi, Jacob, Enos, Jarom, and Omni. Yep. Okay. In the New Testament, to align with the New Testament, the Nephite writings from the birth of Christ to soon after 420 AD, and that is contained in 3rd Nephi, 4th Nephi, Mormon, Words of Mormon, and it says here inserted between Omni and Messiah, when Mormon wrote his abridgment, and obviously Moroni. Yeah. Now, here was the challenge for me last night. Okay, the Sealed Book of Mormon, Old Testament times, and I may be wrong, and I went on to johnpratt.com to get the religious chronology, because he's very good with his chronology on time frames of what happened in the religious times. And I added them in, and you'll see that I've put a note there that to tell you that I got that references from his website. So in chapter 1 of obviously the Old Testament part of the Sealed Book of Mormon is the Sealed Book of Moses, and Moses input, in other words. So chapter 1 of the Sealed Book of Moses was sometime between May and October of 1462 BC. And I did the research of the reading of what was happening at that time. This was very close to the time when he was transfigured on the mountain, Mount Sinai, and he was getting all this information from the Lord. And I've got a note here, October the 3rd, 1462 BC was the date Moses was transfigured. And a note here, so this is likely plausible to be the same time frame that D&C section 22 RLDS was given to Moses, and in Moses chapter 1, obviously in the Pearl of Great Price LDS upon the Mount. Okay, chapter 2 of Sealed Book of Moses was the days of King Josiah, and that was in approximately 650 to 601 BC, sometime in that time frame that happened. I couldn't pinpoint an exact date, sorry. Chapter 3, given approximately the time of Moses' transfiguration in 1462 BC, it switches from times in the different chapters as I found out. So chapter 4 is the days of Enos, and that's 3765 BC to 2861 BC. So that's going back a bit further. And Enos was ordained on the 18th of April, 3631 BC. So I managed
to be able to get any dates on these things. It would have been far beyond me to have, even contemplated being able to do that. But John Pratt was certainly gifted in his knowledge of the old calendars and how to work out these things.
He pinpointed it through so many books and alignment of whatever he did. He did explain it to us once, but it was a little bit overwhelming.
We need to have another good chat to him, really.
All right. The Sealed Book of Mormon in Old Testament, we're still continuing here on the Sealed Book of Moses. Chapter 5, Moses explains the time of Methuselah. And that here, I've got here 3312 BC, that'd be, after Zion was taken on the 12th of October. Zion was taken on the 12th of October 2948 BC. Talks of what happened with Enoch before the flood, and Enoch's sign was taken by the Lord, probably given to him at the time he spent with God on the Mount. That's how Moses learnt of that. Chapter 6, the story of Nimrod, the son of Cush, talks of before and after the flood. So approximately 2240 BC to 1992 BC, in that time frame of when Babel.
Is some of that found in the book of Jasher?
Some of it, yeah, some of it probably is. Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't done that research today.
No, okay.
Yep. Chapters 7 and 8 continues with the story of Nimrod, the time of the Tower of Babel and confounding of the languages. Approximately, we know that was 2200 when in the Book of Mormon it mentions about just before the Jaredites left. So it is between 2240 BC to 1992 BC.
Right.
Chapters 9 and 10 is Abram before Abraham. The priesthood becomes active in Abram and Melchizedek and the tithing. Abram becomes Abraham and covenant made for descendants. So that happens more in the chapter 10, obviously. But we know I didn't get a time frame on that. Okay. Chapter 11 is Jacob or Israel, the patriarchal blessing on Judah and Joseph and his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And that would have been approximately about 1762 BC. Chapter 12, Joseph prophesies in Egypt that Moses will deliver Israel from Egyptian captivity. God reveals Joseph that a branch of his descendants will be taken to a distant land, and from his loins 2 seers and a mouthpiece will come to the aid of Moses, whom the Lord will raise up in the last days. And that was given sometime between 1783 to 1770 BC. Okay. Chapters 13 and 14, we've got the story of Moses before he left Egypt and the story of Moses after he left Egypt in those 2 chapters. And that happened at approximately 1542 to 1461 BC. And note, the burning bush was in 1462 BC. There was a lot happening around that time, including the parting of the waters and such, and the Exodus. Chapter 15, the story of Moses after returning from Egypt to see Pharaoh, approximately 1461 BC. We know that chapter 16, the story of Moses after freeing the Hebrews from slavery to Egypt, happened in that time frame of 1461 BC. And the Red Sea crossing was in April of 1461 BC. Chapter 17, the story of Moses before the council of the heavens. He was at Sinai when he was delivered. So that was the when he went up on the mount.
Yeah.
And they arrived at Sinai on the 23rd of May, 1461. So that time frame was absolutely amazing what was happening at that time frame. Chapter 18, the 12 apostles and Moses in the promised land, is the 12 spies reporting on the tribes of Israel. And I did leave an A out there and an E or something. Sent out on the 12th of July, 1460 BC, and returned on the 20th of August, 1460 BC. So they're out only a month or so, just over a month. And Moses died on the 15th of January, 1421 BC.
You notice there that the times get counting down the other way.
The other way, because we're in BC.
Otherwise, you'd look at that and you'd say, well, he died, and then something else was happening.
It's counting down towards the birth of Christ.
Just a point of interest.
Okay, now we go to the New Testament times of the Seal Book, and this was very difficult. I spent a lot of time, but I only give approximates here. Chapter 1 would have to be 34 AD and after, just around that time frame. I tried to line it up with the Book of Mormon with the readings. Chapter 2, 34 AD, it must be when Christ is with them and teaching them. Chapter 3, approximately 194 to 230 AD, it's when the wickedness was, when they were living all things in common, but it was on the verge of collapsing. Chapter 4, a little bit after that, so it was probably when it was declining at that time. Chapter 5, I couldn't align. Chapter 6 and 7, same. I haven't had time to really delve into it. Chapter 8, approximately 36 AD to somewhere to 194 AD. Chapter 9, the same. Chapter 10, I couldn't align, and 11. And obviously 12, 13, and 14 are around the 34 AD. And the last one is Jesus, of course, when he was with them, with the Nephites. Okay. So I hope that was interesting for someone. I know it's a bit boring for some people, but I like to get a time frame of things, of what's happening.
The fact that you can actually, come up with those dates, to me is rather marvelous anyway. So that's really good.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment if I could.
Yes, Brother Bob.
I know it's recording, but I won't say the person's name. I can't actually remember the man's name. But there was a man that came to Center Place branch there in Independence shortly after we formed the branch from out east, maybe Indiana or across from, I think it was across from Kentucky, one of those states, and across the Ohio River from Kentucky. But he was a student of John Pratt's calendar work.
Wow.
And he told me that he considers himself probably the foremost student of John Pratt with his calendar work. And he offered himself as a resource to anyone who's interested to sort of continue the knowledge and the research that John did in this area of these sacred calendars, ancient calendars. And this man even developed an app for his phone that he can put things in, and it apparently there's a little bit of calculations you do, but to compare the calendars and so on. But I thought if anybody has an interest that has a young bright mind, or even an old bright mind, that can understand this work, it'd be a shame to have this knowledge completely lost. He's not totally active in the church. He's supportive, I think, but if I can think of his name, you can write to me or something, but maybe someone else in the group knows his name, but let's not mention his name here. But
Okay.
I thought that was really interesting. He only came once to my knowledge. He camped out at Lake Jacomo, which is a lake here or in Missouri there. And it was really fascinating.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to continue John Pratt's work on calendars, this man would be the one to talk to.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thanks,
That-
Brother Bob.
That is interesting, Brother Bob. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to things like this. And I was lucky enough to get John Pratt's book, The Creator's Magnificent Clock. And it's a little over my head for understanding at this time, but I'm going to do some more research on it when I get time. There's just so much going on here with things on also me being taught by the Lord on understanding books and things. I've got to give the time to learning those because I need to know myself. But in the time frame that I've been learning, really, and Dad will attest to this, I knew nothing much about the scriptures at all from 2019 up to 2019.
Amazing. It is totally amazing the blessings that have been passed on to Darren in his learning cycle, whereas coming from virtually from the outside and taking in the things of the Lord and spiritual things and spiritual writings, and then getting an understanding on it, that's just beyond explanation to me, and I'm still at wonder. And Joan too, with the fact that this has happened, and Brother Bob and Sister Melva would attest to the starting point of when that actually began, because it didn't happen before. I can assure you, it didn't happen before.
It's only the Lord's hand. It can only be because I can't explain it myself. And the understanding has been coming a little bit too fast sometimes for me. It overwhelms me at some time, and my brain becomes overwhelmed and I've got to stop. I think, I just can't. And now I understand when the Lord says, line upon line, precept upon precept, yeah, in other words, just take little bit by little bit, because it's beyond the understanding. And this is people that come to the work. You can't overload them. It's like when we go and minister to people, or we give missionary work like we've done.
Yeah.
People can't understand. You can't overload them. There's a
cut off.
Yeah, there is a point. And I'm learning this, that you can overwhelm people if you go on too long. You can only give a small outline to start with and build on that.
And even ourselves in presentations, we realise now that, you know, we've got to set an end time. That you know, at 15 minutes in 1 hour, like I'm trying to calculate.
We leave 15 minutes.
We've got to have an end. You've got to have an end already planned, because there is a cut-off point where it's no good. And I think that happened. I think somewhere in teaching with little children, there is a time span of understanding, and then beyond that, you just it's no good going on any further.
Yeah, and this, I learnt this also with. When I put things on YouTube, and I was reading people's comments, and these days, the level of attention you can grab someone for is very short. When you put something online these days, if you can't get a message across in 2 minutes, between 2 and 5 minutes, no longer than 5 minutes. In fact, 5 minutes is too long these days. That's why they like this TikTok and things like that. They're very small videos that come up, and they grab people's attention, and they just flick through them as they're going along. And if it grabs someone's attention for a short time, that's great. But beyond that, you just get wiped on and continue. And
even though, you know, there are gems and jewels amongst all of the things of the restoration scriptures, but to use that wisely and present it wisely is the means of getting the message across. And
okay, righto, we're going to move on here.
Yeah.
Okay, we've been given the nod. Okay, the Jaredites. One definition of testament with reference to the Bible is a solemn covenant. Another is definition of the word testament is a solemn, authentic instrument in writing of a deceased person concerning the carrying out of his wishes, or her, with regards to his estate. Okay. This is referred to in Hebrews 9:15 to 18 in the inspired version. And do you want to read this one, Dave?
Yeah, okay. And for this cause, he is the mediator of the new covenant, that by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first covenant, which they are called, might receive the promise of eternal inheritance. For where a covenant is, there must also necessarily be the death of the victim. For a covenant is the force after the victim is dead. Otherwise, it is of no strength at all while the victim liveth. Wherein or whereupon neither the first covenant was dedicated without blood.
Yeah, and I've got a note on here that the King James Version, just a note, replaces covenant with testament. That's the difference between the inspired version and the...
This. Can I comment here?
Yes.
This is a powerful thought here, and I think it's portrayed in the life of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
If he had not died, this covenant the new covenant would not be in effect.
Yes, that's true.
And this is the outline of that fact. Yeah.
Thank you, Brother Bob. Yeah, it's very important, isn't it? Okay. These verses from Hebrews show that the first or old covenant was not of force, not fulfilled until after Christ's death, as Bob just mentioned, as we read in Hebrews verse 15, and for this cause he is the mediator of the new covenant, that by means of death for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first covenant, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance. So those peoples of whom we study in the Book of Mormon or Sealed Book of Mormon had knowledge of God and his plan of salvation for fallen man. They knew Christ would come in the meridian of time or the fullness of time and would offer himself a sacrifice for the sins of the world. And that's mentioned in 2nd Nephi there with those references. And also the Sealed Book of Mormon in Sealed Book of Moses, chapter 3, verse 15 there. Okay. And this is from that reading from Sealed Book of Moses, chapter 3, 15.
Verse 15.
Yep.
But Adam fell, fulfilling the requirements of the Father to be fruitful and to fill the earth with his offspring. And the priesthood of the Son of God exists to make the people of the earth come to understand the plan of salvation and allow the children of man to know how to wait for the Son of God, who will come in the fullness of time to redeem from the fall those who believed in him in order to become free from the yoke of sin and death, so that they may return again to the presence of the Father.
Yep. And the references there to 2nd Nephi as well. We've got some references there.
That's a very
and
important statement of returning to the presence of the Father, which is, of course, what we look forward to through the sacrifice of Jesus and taking upon him his name and doing what he would want us to do so that that might happen.
Okay, we'll continue with the Old Testament part of the Book of Mormon. These people wrote of their experiences with God as well as their history in general. And those who lived before the coming of Christ wrote of the promises, even as did the people of the Bible lands before Christ. After Christ's crucifixion and resurrection, he appeared to his followers in and around Jerusalem, and then to his disciples in ancient America, who wrote their testimony of him as they came to know him under the new covenant. Thus, these ancient peoples wrote both their Old and New Testaments. Beginning the Old Testament of the Book of Mormon, we study not the first of the book, but the book of Ether of the Book of Mormon, which is abridged the writings of the first colony who came to America. Okay, so this is now getting on to a bit of interaction shortly, but we note here, I did put a note here, all Bible references are using the inspired Joseph Smith translation of the Bible, unless otherwise noted. But the lesson objective here is to trace the origin of the Jaredites and to observe that God dealt with them as he does with all who have faith in him and are obedient to his laws. The lesson introduction here is God cleansed the earth of wickedness by the great flood, after which men were given another opportunity to serve him, but defiance of his laws again brought forth punishment. Within the estimated space of only 150 years, mankind had again become so wicked that God saw fit to confound and scatter them. And there's reference in Genesis there. There is a King James version, but it's much more explanatory in the inspired version there.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I'll just comment that we know that the Sealed Book of Mormon, I didn't add that in, but we know that that part of Nimrod, and that is in the Sealed Book, and it explains a lot about that. And I think it's chapters 7 and 8.
Nimrod was a prime mover in some of those things that happened at that time.
And how Satan got in and polluted the priesthood at that time. Okay, that a great change took place in the world's contour, and this is quite interesting, is told simply in Genesis 10:16 in the inspired version and 10:25 in the King James.
I don't think it's in.
Yeah, well, not as it's always preferred in the inspired version. As a prelude to the great scattering, this apparently took place very shortly before the dispersion. Read the Seal, and I've got a comment here, read the Sealed Book of Moses, chapters 7 and 8, as I said before, for clarification on the subject. Okay, so after the flood, Noah's 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, became the heads, or the founders of the various races. And that's mentioned in Genesis there. You'll see the references. Japheth and his descendants occupied the countries bordering on the Mediterranean Sea and Asia as far east as Media, as mentioned in Genesis there again. Ham, the father of the coloured race, mentioned in Genesis there on those references, settled in North Africa, Egypt and Babylon. Okay, Shem and his children settled in Arabia and southeastern Asia and became the Hebrews, Assyrians, Arabians and Persians. And that's mentioned in Genesis in those references there. Study a Bible map showing where these people settled, and that's on the next slide. I'm going to present a map of the world. Undoubtedly, the Jaredites were Shem's lineage, since it was one of this family that the priestly line descended, as plainly seen by Adam's family tree. And a diagram coming next lesson that says there. It was through this line that Abraham came and also Jesus himself. That's interesting. Okay, so here's the map, and it says a world map showing the breaking away of the parts of the earth from the whole. Try to picture the earth as it may have been when all in one, as it was originally created. Observe how some portions seem to fit naturally into others, and you can see, like where, Africa and America, South and North America would join up there. And with Europe, how it would all come together. And we got talking about this yesterday.
Yeah.
And we know in Scripture it says that
in the days of Peleg, the earth was divided.
And that it also says that the earth is going to be restored to its original state
in the last days.
In the last days.
Yeah.
And this got some searching happening, and we also were talking about it. And we put some references down here. One is note D&C 108 in the RLDS. There's a reference there, and we're going to read them in a second here. And Genesis chapter 10, verse 16. So we'll go ahead and read that. This is the Genesis one from the Inspired Version.
Okay. I might get Joan to read this. Could you? Okay, just the one thing here. It's only a short verse.
And Peleg was a mighty man, for in his days was the earth divided. That's in Genesis 10:16.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Yep. So we've got also from the Doctrine and Covenants, and we'll read this one. This is from 108 RLDS or 133 in the LDS. And it says, "Wherefore prepare ye for the coming of the bridegroom. Go ye out to meet him. For behold, he shall stand upon Mount of Olivet, and upon the mighty ocean, even the great deep, and upon the islands of the sea, and upon the land of Zion. And he shall utter his voice out of Zion, and he shall speak from Jerusalem, and his voice shall be heard among all people. And it shall be a voice as the voice of many waters, as the voice of a great thunder, which shall break down the mountains, and the valleys shall not be found. He shall command the great deep, and it shall be driven back into the north countries, and the islands shall become one land. And the land of Jerusalem and the land of Zion shall be turned back into their own place. And the earth shall be like it was in the days before it was divided. And the Lord, even the Saviour, shall stand in the midst of his people, and shall reign over all flesh."
That's an amazing statement there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially there about the earth coming as it was before it was divided.
And this also got me thinking last night about when we know that the seal book has come forth as part of this, the thing that Lord's bringing forward to restore all things. And I believe, this is my personal belief, that the earth will be the same as it was when it started in the time of Adam and Eve. I think it's going to be pushed into one land, and I believe that it's like a full circle. You go right round, and it's back to how it was in the beginning.
And the significance in the temple lot area, especially. It's got
my belief on that. I think that's the Garden of Eden. Yeah.
But when you realise that what is foretold here to happen is that's it all. It's possible, like that. I don't know whether we walk or whether we go by camel or whatever, but we could travel from what was the old Jerusalem to Zion in Independence, just down the road, sort of thing.
Without crossing water.
Yeah.
Okay. Righto. And I had this from 3rd Nephi last night as well. And he did expound all things, even from the beginning until the time he should come in his glory. Yea, even all things which should come upon you, the face of the earth, even until the elements should melt with fever and heat, and the earth should be wrapped together as a scroll, and the heavens and the earth should pass away. So if you think about it, wrapping it like a scroll, it's pushing everything into one. That's the way I'll look at it anyway. Okay. And, I've got another one here. This is another one that goes along with it. Yeah. This is from Mormon. It says, behold, ye believe in the day of your visitation. Behold, when the Lord shall come, yea, even that great day when the earth shall be rolled together as a scroll, and the elements shall melt with fever and heat. Yea, in that great day when ye shall be brought to stand before the Lamb of God, then ye will say that there is no God. So that was obviously questioning. Someone questioning.
I'm excited to think, has anybody got any comments on any of this? This is mind bending information, and you probably have known that all along, everyone. But what's your comments? I'd love to hear what your feelings are about that. Do you see anything? Can you say something that would set my mind at ease anyway? Thank you.
I'll comment. As you've been going through this, I've been reminded of the scriptures that says, and every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain shall be hill and be made low.
Yep.
As well as what you're talking about here. And I just trying to think quickly in my mind, well, what's the purpose of all this? What is the purpose? What's the purpose of no mountains and no valleys and all one land and no water and no seas, I guess. But it doesn't say that, but I just wonder why that's the plan. If any, I don't have an answer. That's something to ponder. And I'm like you, Brian. It's just fun to go on this journey in your mind and just say, well, Lord, help me think about all this.
Yeah, you've got to sort of move a little out of the square to understand that perhaps when we arrive at a full understanding, we'll say, oh, I get it now, but it does require faith. It requires faith.
I think just to answer a little bit of Brother Bob, in my understanding anyway, it's to bring everything as one again, people as one, and to be together as one, hopefully in the righteous side.
Yeah, I can make a comment here too. Another comment. If you look in the writings of the Jaredites at Ether, he refers to the Great Sea, and the Bible refers to the Great Sea as what we take as the Mediterranean Sea. But Ether refers to the Great Sea, but he qualifies it. He says, "The Great Sea that divideth the land." Or the lands. And so, it's like, again, there's this division, separation, and God used that to his advantage, to keep people separated, I think, so that they wouldn't all go bad at the one time, I think. Yeah. But I just thought that the concept of dividing the lands is somehow important. And if you read in the Bible, of course, it talks about boundaries. It talks about this people is giving this land as inheritance. The Israelites were given Canaan, and the sealed book people are given parts of the United States or North and South America.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just interesting how maybe the Lord has, of course, allocated space for all these tribes, if you will. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think you're right there, Brother Bob. Yeah, I do agree.
It's anyway. It's a lot of thought, and yeah, I'm just interested. Is there anyone else that
was one
would also like to comment? Yeah.
The Apostle Paul mentions in the New Testament that Christ in the last days would gather together all things in himself, in heaven and in earth, that the dispensation of the fullness of times contains everything which the previous dispensations have contained. So it reminds me too of the scripture. It says there's a time for scattering and a time for gathering, and the Lord's plan over the centuries. After the flood, when the earth was cleansed, he commanded them to go out into all the earth. And they kind of rebelled. They stayed at the tower and they wanted to make a name for themselves. And on the last days, the Lord's calling everyone together to Zion. And so it's reverse. There's the rebellion of man wants to be independent and apart from God. But I take comfort in that scripture that Paul wrote, because it's all things will be gathered to Christ, and God is doing his work to accomplish that. So that's exciting. Whether it's the continents or the people or the work or the clarifying the doctrine, he's going to unite us so that Zion can come forth from all God's creations. And that's a wonderful thing. The word Peleg means divide or earthquake. And so when we think of the continental drift and the force that caused those different continents to come apart, and the power that will bring back together not just the land but all things, it's going to be a mighty display of God's power to fulfill his works. That is exciting.
Yeah. Thanks, Brother Tyler.
Thanks, Brother Tyler. That was lovely.
Yeah, it's just the immense power that God will display in these things that will transpire, and it's just wow, it's just something to look forward to.
I think in Scripture, I can't remember where it is, but I have read that it'll be bigger than anything that ever has been in the time the earth has been standing. And it'll be something magnificent, to see.
Nobody can dispute then the power of God.
No,
I
think that's his display of his power.
Yep.
The ultimate display of his power. Okay. All right. So this is for interactive question discussion time here. We're towards the end, so we're on time here, which is good. This will allow a bit of discussion as well, and we've had a lot of comments, which is good. Okay, number one, who was the founder of Babel, and what was the reason behind the building of the tower and God's displeasure? And there's some references there for people that are watching this at a later time can also read.
Stop the recording at this point and look up those references, I guess. Yeah.
But if anyone wants to comment and answer, what they believe, on that, can go ahead. Otherwise,
in one of our previous studies, I remember we were looking at how high that tower got up to, and it was quite a distance in the air. In fact, I don't know how they did it without some breathing apparatus, because the air would have been pretty thin once you get a mile, which is 1.6 kilometers in the air. And so therefore, it was certainly mankind trying to show that they're the best and they can do whatever they want to do. And it certainly didn't work out that way. It was interesting what the Lord did to stop it too.
Yeah, it sure was. Yeah. Does anyone want to have a stab at this one, or I can comment if we all sort of know anyway, because we learnt this in the early
Well,
part.
just give me
yeah,
a minute
yeah.
because I'm interested in some of those out there, that we would love to hear from. Yeah.
Well, I'll just make a brief comment. From what I remember, it's mankind wanted a way to reach the heavens, or God wanted to make their own way. And so they built this tower to, and thinking that they could make their own portal, to the heavens without the approval of God. And they, with the knowledge that they had attained, I think we could say with the help of Satan, they were able to at least get the tower built. And, the Lord said, look what they have done. If we let them continue, there's going to be no end to what they will try to do. So that displeased God, because they were not relying on him. They were relying on only themselves. And I think we could say with the help of Satan also. So that's my spiel. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Brother Rex.
Thanks, Brother Rex. Yeah. I'd just comment what I read. I don't know where it was. Was it in the seal book? I don't know. I can't remember, but it's from what I read, it was they wanted to overthrow the Lord. They wanted to take over, and it was Satan getting into their minds and hearts and saying, we can go up and take over heaven, and we can.
There'll be a door there, and we'll go in and take over.
Oh, there's another comment going to be made here.
Yeah, that's me again. I just remembered that spurred another thought that, it was Nimrod.
Yeah.
That said that he was the promised descendant. So that's, that was the goal, to take over as, to kind of reset things in the evil, the evil manner, the evil priesthood, the false descendant, the false Christ. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brother X. Yeah. As I think that's in the seal book where it says about he wanted to change the priesthood to suit the order of Marduk or the order of Satan, and the hearts of the people, and he also poisoned the children, and were teaching them in schools or something like that to rebel, and
whatever was good was bad, and whatever was bad was good, or something of that nature, wasn't it? Yeah.
The feelings to upset the feelings in the people. Yeah. But anyway, okay. So we know, I was going to mention about Nimrod too, that we know that the scriptures say he was a mighty warrior or a mighty hunter or something like that. And I did some research that I think I mentioned back a bit, where that when the ark, when Noah had the ark and they all were on the ark and came, they had the clothing that God had made for Adam and Eve in the ark. And it was a spiritual, there was something spiritual about it, because whoever wore those had a lot of strength.
And
Nimrod may have got a hold of that at some stage. Yeah. And yeah, but anyway, I don't know what happened to it. I do know there's somewhere in one of the books. I know what happened to it, but anyway. Okay. So number 2, discuss the preparation God made for widely separating the peoples to all parts of the earth, and the separation which the confounding of the languages imposed on the people, in addition to their geographic separation. Okay. So,
well, it was certainly, I recall that the brother of Jared prayed to God that they would not have their language confounded. So he must have known of the confusion and despair that would have set upon the people of God, who were the ones endeavoring to try and maintain a spiritual relationship with the Lord.
And we know in the seal book it does say that pure and undefiled language, which it must have been.
Yeah, it was a different language, and maybe this is what is also prophesied to be sort of happening in the days to come.
I think so. I think it does say that.
Any thoughts on that? Anybody got any ideas on the pure language? What is meant by that?
I think that Sister Renee had a good article that she wrote that I thought was insightful, because there is a scripture in the seal book that talks about the love that's shared. It could be between two people or two cities or even two countries. The distance doesn't matter, but the common tongue is the love in their hearts. And so when the brother of Jared saw what was happening, or Jared and his brother, Jared asked his brother to pray to the Lord that perhaps their language would not be confounded. And I think Renee could correct me, but what she was pointing out in the article, that maybe it was the love of God that they were able to retain so that they could relate and continue to communicate. And I'm sure there's more to the confounding of the languages, but that's a key aspect that's brought out in the seal book, is that we would have a new common tongue among even various groups of people, and that would unite us together and diminish the distance between us.
Very good.
That's correct. Yes, that's very good. Yeah, it brought. I think that correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's in Acts of the Three Nephites, where it mentions about the homes of Zion and that in that section. But the pure language, yes, I do remember that. The pure tongue or the pure language.
Yeah. Sister Renee, would you like to comment? We don't want to put you on the spot there, but would you like to make a comment on that too?
Well, I think Tyler did a good job of saying what I was thinking anyway. I am having a foggy brain today, so I don't.
Don't worry, that happens all the time for me.
Yeah, it was just all about the sealed book, the feelings and the corresponding feelings being the names of God. That they are derived from the names of God, and I wish I could say more, but I don't know why some days I get a foggy brain, and today's one of those days.
That's okay.
That's okay, Sister Renee. I get that all the time.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, but it's lovely to know these views are helpful in understanding more deeply, what is being said here.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a comment. This is Bob.
Yes, brother.
I find it interesting that Jonas, when he was writing about his experience of them being taken, the three of them being taken away from the Nephites at the time of Christ and going to the remotest villages of the earth, that with, of course, the message of Christ. And I don't recall, if I recall correctly, there was not a single village that was receptive to them. I didn't really say that, but it seemed like he talked more about the problems they encountered. But as far as the language, he said, I found the wording very interesting. He said, at times we had to use the gift of tongues to communicate. Yeah. And I didn't understand. I really don't understand tongues as such, but it's almost like was a gift or that you can use. It's not like determined by heaven. It's like you can call upon it and use it as a resource. But as far as this language, they found a way to communicate in the native language where they were, but the language of the message of Christ was not accepted by anyone they visited. Which I'm probably reading it too much into that, but I thought the remotest villages. I don't see the second invitation, at least initially, ever going to these remotest villages of the earth. But the Nephites did. The three Nephites did.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, Brother Bob. Did they mention something about going to the eastern countries or something like that, like Asia or something like that? That could have been possible that I read somewhere. I'm not sure. Anyway.
It
Okay.
definitely mentions they went to one of them. Jonah went to Jerusalem.
Yes.
Yeah, where Paul was anyway. I don't know if it was Jerusalem. I can't remember, but
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I had an idea in my head. It was somewhere like Europe or
Yeah.
that continent. Anyway, yeah. Thank you, Sister Renee. Okay. I think we're up.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'll read that verse if you like. It's chapter 7 of Acts of the Three Nephites, and it's verse 5. It says, "In these days there will," and I read this because it's a good example of the juxtaposition between Babylon and what is prophesied to happen in our days. It says, "In these days there will be a transformation of the peoples, among whom there will be a pure tongue. For each man and woman will invoke the name of the Lord in their hearts, so that the love is the feeling shared by both parties, whether it be between two persons or two groups or even between different cities. For wherever your people are gathered, there will be the same feelings among brothers." So that, to me, the confounding issue, could we think of that in the terms of human tongue and human speech, which is true, I believe, but also when we set ourselves in the same attitude as the people who built the tower, we're looking for greatness and looking to excel above our brother, and then we start to go our own way, we automatically start to have communication problems because we're taking ourselves away from being one and being united in our feelings. And so there's an aspect to the fall of man which corrupts their communication, an aspect to the redemption of man which restores that, and the sealed book is to play a big part of that in the last days. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Brother Tyler.
Yeah, very good. And I understand that, and that certainly refreshed my memory on the scripture, that's for sure. Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought that one up and read that. Thank you. Yeah. So we know that that's going to happen, and through the hearts and the love and that sort of thing that will come on through the attributes of Christ. Okay. Number 3, prove that. Have I read this already? Prove that some few people knew that this scattering and confounding of the languages was coming. In what sense may we today take comfort in this thought? And there's some references to Ether there and Amos. And I don't know, I've got inspired version. I must have had something I was going to add in there and I didn't add it in. But anyway, yeah. Does anyone want to comment? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking of, I think it's the scripture from Amos that I'll paraphrase that the Lord does nothing without, bringing it to the knowledge of his prophets beforehand. So that's the abbreviated version of that scripture. So, if we follow the advice and understanding of the prophets or our prophet of the day, then we can take comfort in knowing that, these things are coming and there will be plans beforehand, to provide for, the righteous people of the Lord. So that's all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you want to comment any more on that?
No.
I know time's. We've got a few minutes to go. Yeah. Okay. So we'll go to number 4 here. It says, "Give the dates of the beginning and end of the Jaredite nation." And I'll just comment here because we're running out of time here. But we know that 2200 BC was when that they gathered to prepare to go to the promised land through direction of the Lord and the faith of the brother of Jared and his brother
and
the family. Yep.
and how they did that too. That was
Yeah,
remarkable.
The eight barges.
Yes, yeah.
Yep. But as far as the ending of it would be with Coriantumr, is it Coriantumr?
Yeah, I think it was.
When he lived, was it Coriantumr lived 9 moons or something before he died, and he passed on.
Yeah, he gave the plates, the 24 gold plates, I think, to the people of Limhi. Yeah. And they must have got some information from him, obviously, in some way, but it wasn't a long time. That would have been, rather remarkable that they would try and get this information from this old man who had been preserved by God to do that, to just that, and to pass on that information.
Now we've got just a couple more pages, and then we'll finish up for the prayer session of prayer. Okay, number 5. Who composed the colony of the Jaredites? And we know that you'll find that in Ether with those references there, and also who were their leaders, and tell what you can of the general qualifications for leadership in Ether. That gives you some references there, but we know that the Jared and his brother, the brother of Jared,
Marianne. And it's interesting, we've been able to finally have that name confirmed in the seal book, and that was lovely to be able to do that, because there are a lot of people who've often used to, say in the early days, as I recall anyway, that they can't even list his name. So, but it was great to be able to do that.
Okay, and the general qualifications, I think, would be the faith. Would be the main qualification that the Lord would be looking for there, and he definitely found it with the brother of Jared and the Jaredites at that time. Go ahead. Yes.
Sorry, you spurred another thought there.
No, that's fine, Rex.
I think it's, if I see if I can say this correctly, the belief of the leaders was so strong that it ceased to be belief and became knowledge, I think, is the wording of the scripture.
Yeah. That's a pretty
powerful,
definitive faith to be able to do that. Yes, I agree.
That's wonderful. I don't recall reading that. Maybe I've got to read a bit more there, Brother Rex. But that's wonderful. Okay, note. It's got a note here. There can be only an estimate of the number of persons who composed the Jaredite colony, but we do know that 8 barges were required to bring them and their provisions, and that's mentioned in Ether with those references there. Not counting the families of Jared and his brother, they had about 22 friends who also begat sons and daughters before they came to the promised land, with those references there. Jared had 12 sons, so rather a large family, and daughters, and his brother 22. And that's mentioned in Ether. But perhaps not all of them were born before they came to the promised land. That should be not he promised land. Right. I must add happy fingers when I was typing.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So before the language was confounded, all spoke the same language. Jared and his brother, Marianne, as we know, and their friends continued to speak this language after the great confusion came to the ungodly peoples. What was this language? And we discussed this before, so we don't need to go into
language.
Yep. And it's reviewed in the slides here. We're right on the end of the lesson here, but I won't go into reading all this. Pause the video if you're at this point and you want to read that, but it's mentioned in the Pearl of Great Price and Genesis there, and also down the bottom.
Egyptian.
Yep, the Acts of the Three Nephites, chapter 10, verse 6 and 13, 15, about that pure tongue and pure sentiments derived from the names and attributes of God that became the holy language. Okay. And also of notation to read is the sealed book of Moses 7:1. about the language of Adam and before the flood, and also this language. It says down here, I'll just read this last bit here. This language continued after the flood until the people threw Nimrod under the direction of Satan, which we know, to start his own priesthood, the order of Mahan, and began to compromise the pure and holy gifts of the priesthood of the Son of God, and thus became a wicked people at the time of the Tower of Babel, and were scattered with their language that was confounded by the Lord. And read chapters 7 and 8 of the Sealed Book of Moses for more on that. Okay. The language of the Jaredites, I think we've gone over this language enough to understand it, but there's some references there to follow up on if people want to follow up. Also in Words of Moroni, verses 38 to 40 in the beginning of the Sealed Book. Okay, and down at the bottom here, hence the record of the Jaredites that came into the hands of Joseph Smith Jr. was in reformed Egyptian. That was part of it. Okay. I think we'll make this the last slide now.
Okay.
Yep. So, in fact, I think we'll do this next time because there's a fair bit of conversation got to be done with that. So we'll end the lesson there today. And we thank you all for the participation and
I enjoyed the input, and certainly a little bit of colour from our end with Joan reading the part of Emma Smith, and no doubt she, Emma, in doing some of the scribe work for Joseph Smith Jr. I don't know what parts she did write down, but it would have been a thrilling thing to have been part of that too. So it makes it a little bit more real, the fact that her input in writing was rather unique. Thank you. Yeah.
Yep. But we thank everyone, and I'll just exit here. We'll continue on next time when we get a chance. Now, I was chatting with Dad yesterday about our next class, which is right on the Christmas
I think it's 2 days
schedule.
before Christmas, is it?
Yeah, it is.
2 or 3 days before Christmas.
And we might leave the Plates of Mormon studies till
beyond that. Yeah.
Yep. So I'll just get out of that.
We might have
Hopefully I haven't chopped everyone off here. Where are we here? I think we're still on. Yep.
Have we still got everyone?
Yeah, I think we have.
Okay.
Yep. I quite often push the wrong button. Anyway, we thank you all and for your participation today.
Now, so, and in closing that of our presentation, here we'll move into a season of prayer, if we may. And I have I have a sheet of paper with lots of names on it. And I might just note these because